Okay. Oh, forgot about him. Does he remember it was today? Steve, there's not a tournament. He's in a tournament all the time. I never knew there were so many tournaments. You're missing my point, but that's okay. Okay, should we go ahead and move forward? Okay, are we on? Hello, you ready? Ms. Marnie, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Steve Friedman. Councilmember Doug Gillis.
Here.
Councilmember Anna Richards.
Here.
Vice Mayor Don Horton.
Here.
And Mayor Sharon Mahoney.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. It says we don't do Pledge of Allegiance, so we're just going straight to public comment.
Yep. You can do the pledge if you want, but
We're going to do it in an hour. I'm good.
this just works.
Okay, so public comment. Marnie, is there anyone?
No one has signed up with me.
Okay.
Let me double check on Zoom before.
John, do you read the items for discussion? Or do you want me to just?
Yep. I mean, it's not a resolution or anything, so it's just the legislative priorities, and we're going to be getting an update from Ryan Matthews with Gray Robinson, who I believe is on via Zoom.
Okay. Ready to go.
Yeah, I'll kick it off because I've requested Ryan, who's our lobbyist with Gray Robinson, to give us an update. As most of you know, the legislative session was scheduled to end, but it has not ended because they have not completed the budget process. So we know that Ryan can only give us an update as far as what's happened so far, but I thought we'd get an update of where we are, particularly with our budget priorities, and then talk about maybe starting the process for our legislative priorities for next year, because you can never start too early. So Ryan is on now on Zoom, so welcome, Ryan Matthews.
Thank you, Ron, and good afternoon. Can you hear and see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. As Ron mentioned, we were originally scheduled to end legislative session on May 2nd, but we sit here June 10th. And while a vast majority of the policy bills have been passed, some have been sent to the governor and signed, a couple have been vetoed, we still don't have a budget. And the appropriators are finalizing a budget this past week with the hope of getting something done by the end of the week. Both the House and Senate have passed a concurrent resolution stating that this legislative session will end June 18th. So we really need by Friday of this week, the House and Senate to come to an agreement on all matters, individual budget silos, health and human services, the environment, transportation, education, etc. So that what happens after that time is that there is a 72-hour cooling off period once that budget has been finalized, mandatory cooling off period before debate and questions can begin on the budget. So that should happen prior to June 18th. I want to talk a little bit just very globally about why we're sort of in the state that we're in. You'll recall dating back to January, Governor DeSantis called the legislature into a special session as it relates to immigration. Obviously, this was the beginning of the Trump administration, and really we were only 2 to 3 months into the new tenure of the presiding officers in the House and Senate, Speaker Danny Perez in the House and Senate President Ben Albritton in the Senate. Both of those presiding officers, asserted a little bit of independence once the governor called that special session on immigration. They immediately gavelled out, stating that a special session on immigration was premature, and they really wanted to wait for the Trump administration to give them more direction in terms of what would be the state's role as it relates to immigration. Not surprisingly, this caused a little bit of contention between the governor's office and the House and Senate, and we really have seen that tension, particularly with the governor's office and the House, remain throughout the last 6 months or so. So we had an interesting couple of weeks in January. Before session started in March, we had a snow event in Tallahassee, sort of a 1 in 100 year event. And so we really got off to a somewhat clumsy and clunky start to this legislative session. So as it relates to the budget in particular, The reason we're in the position we're in, again, is the House and Senate couldn't come to an agreement on how much they wanted to spend overall. Last year, we had a $117 billion state budget. The Senate this year proposed a similar $117 billion budget. The House proposed a $112 billion budget. So the two chambers were about $4.5 to $5 billion apart with how much money they wanted to spend. The Speaker has consistently said that the legislature has a recurring spending problem. And the state's economist has said if current spending remains static, that in 3 to 4 years, we could be operating in a $4 to $5 billion budget shortfall. So the Speaker's tack was, let's plan for the future, let's cut down on recurring spending, and he had a couple of proposals to do so. And one of his main tenets of his budget perspective was, let's reduce the sales tax from 6% to 5.25%. That, in and of itself, would have reduced the incoming budget by about $5 billion. The Senate did not want to do so. And so that's what caused our initial consternation and sort of budget chasm, if you will, that has led us to an extended session. You'll also recall the governor has been pretty consistently advocating for property tax reform, whether that is property tax rebates, $1,000 to every homestead owner in the state, going as far as to saying we should abolish property taxes. So we're really kind of in this weird place, and I'll talk about it just before I close and ask for any questions about what happens next, not only as it relates to overall state revenues, but local government revenues in particular as it pertains to property taxes. So we had 1,953 bills filed this session. Only 255 of those bills passed. We had a number of bills that pertain directly to local government, dealing with sovereign immunity and increasing those caps, which has been an ongoing issue that we've talked to you about really over the last 5 years. There was a significant bill dealing with CRAs and handicapping the good work that CRAs across the state do. That bill failed, as well as the sovereign immunity bill. But really the only bill that I want to bring to your attention, and I know John is certainly aware of it, is Senate Bill 180 dealing with emergencies. Senate Bill 180 did pass. It has not yet been sent to the governor. There is an effort from a number of folks throughout the state to get the bill potentially vetoed. And the bill was passed under the guise of planning for both pre and post hurricane recovery and mitigation. But what it did from a local government perspective is say that if you were within a 100-mile radius of a storm, you were prohibited from amending your comp plan in a burdensome or restrictive manner. And that provision was retroactive. Going even further, it didn't define what burdensome or restrictive was. So this is creating a host of problems for local governments across the state. And I think that it would be likely that we may be coming back next legislative session to make some tweaks to that particular law if it does get signed by the governor. I want to talk a little bit about our village appropriations because as we're kind of landing the plane on the budget, these are of significant importance. So first, we had 3 projects. The first being the fireboat. The fireboat has been closed out, if you will, which means it has been agreed to by both the House and Senate to be funded at $360,000. So that is good news. Our second project dealt with the Lower Matacumby Trail. We have closed that project out at $200,000. And our final project deals with the Lower Matacumby Canal. Now, this is a water project. The water project list has not yet been finalized, unlike the trail and the fireboat. So we are waiting, and probably in the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll have an idea of whether we get funding for canal restoration. The House currently has proposed $250,000 for that project, while the Senate has proposed $500,000 for that project. So we feel good that the project will be funded. At what level, we don't know yet, but we continue to advocate with the appropriations chairman and really the House and Senate appropriations chairs and the presiding officers at this point have the most impact on the appropriations negotiations. So we'll keep you updated in terms of where we end up with the canal. I have good news to report, at least as it relates from your lobbying team. We are expanding. As of July 1st, we are bringing on Kate Deloach from the Southern Group at no additional cost to the village to really bolster lobbying efforts locally and at the state level. Kate is great to work with. We've worked with her on really for many years on many individual projects, and we're thrilled that she's going to be coming on to help and under our current contract to help not only communicate with the village, but also with Senator Rodriguez and Representative Mooney. So let's talk a little bit about next steps. Again, that hope is that the plane lands on the budget in the next 7 days or so. And really, there's a short turnaround time before the 2026 legislative session, which starts January 20th. We will begin committee weeks, those interim committee weeks leading up to the start of legislative session in October. So they'll hold sporadic committee weeks in October, November, and December before January 20th. So as it pertains to what does the village need to do leading up to that time, in establishing a legislative agenda, I think it would really behoove all of us to have our priorities, both from a policy and a funding perspective, finalized in that mid-September range. That way we're able to communicate effectively with Senator Rodriguez and Representative Mooney the desires from both a policy and appropriations perspective for the village. And we're happy to participate and be involved in that process to the extent you would like us to. One thing that we really do need to be mindful of before I close is the issue of property taxes and what's going to happen with property taxes. So the House has stood up a select committee on property tax reform to look at and potentially develop some priority policy issues that they will pass during the first week of next legislative session per the Speaker's instructions. And so that committee is looking at 5 things. First, potentially posing a referendum question on the ballot to completely eliminate property taxes on homestead properties. The second would be a new $500,000 homestead exemption and $1 million homestead exemption for those Floridians 65 and older or those who have held ownership of their home for 30 plus years. That's number 2. Number 3 would be to allow the legislature to increase the homestead exemption by general law. Currently, an increase in a homestead exemption has to be done through constitutional amendment. 4 would be modifying the assessment increase limitations 3% every 3 years, and then 15% every 3 years for non-homesteaded properties. And then 5th would be eliminating foreclosures on homestead properties due to tax liens. So this select committee will be meeting over the course of the summer and the fall. I believe they'll hold, I was speaking with the vice chair of that committee just this week. They plan on holding an event in Miami in June or July, as that is probably the most proximate meeting to Islamorada. I'll certainly keep you all updated on that meeting. I think it is important for all local governments to offer any data on the amount of ad valorem collections that you see from a historic and general perspective. I know a number of our clients tell us that the amount of ad valorem revenue they collect don't even fully fund police and fire. Now that varies from locale to locale, but we could be looking at a potential serious local government revenue reduction next session, something to be talking about, something to be planning potentially for. And with that, Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Does anybody on the council have anything you'd like to ask Ryan? Steve? Anna? Don?
So Ryan, when do you think we should propose our wishes to you? In September? You think we should wait till then? We should start having that discussion now.
Councilman, I think they should be finalized in September, quite frankly. So that discussion should be occurring over the next couple of months, quite frankly.
What do you think there's an appetite with DOT to start working with us about some interlocal transportation ideas in Islamorada?
If you'd expand on that for me, interlocal transportation options in what way?
Well, they're talking about reworking some of our bridges, and we're still dealing with a lot of traffic issues in Islamorada. We may be dealing with some more here real soon because of a development in the county. So I think that it might be at least worth looking to DOT to see if they might work with us to find some type of intercity transportation, shuttle or something, for lack of a different name.
Okay, so multimodal options,
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah.
I'm always happy and encourage consistent communication with executive agencies. And, you know, FDOT is similarly formed as DEP is, where there are district offices and district secretaries. I know as it relates to the Phils over the course of the last 6 to 8 years, really, the village has always had pretty good communication and relationship with that FDOT district office. We're happy to begin to engage them on alternative multimodal options. I do think you're harder pressed when you're looking at lane expansion, bridge expansion, and otherwise, just from both a ability standpoint, but also a cost standpoint. Despite the department having $13.5 billion proposed in their 5-year work program, they are pretty stretched when it comes to dollars, believe it or not. But yeah, we are more than happy to start to engage in a discussion with FDOT.
Well, I don't think we're talking about lane expansion, but better use of what we currently have. Has there been any discussion about maybe some tax relief for rental homes that we could consider affordable houses? I mean, every year it seems like property taxes go up, the value of property taxes go up, the taxes go up, the rent goes up, and it's slowly pushing some of our workforce out that way. Has there been any discussion at the state level about finding some exemption for that?
So not significant discussion, quite frankly. I think everyone recognized, and there is a recognition that, the Keys as a whole struggle with workforce housing. And obviously you have a large transient community because of the price of ownership and rentals within the Keys. So there hasn't been, quite frankly, a robust policy discussion, but it's one that we certainly, should continue to engage in.
You also didn't mention anything about land acquisition. Was there any discussion about either, funding or helping any state dollars come in to Islamorada for land acquisition?
So we have $20 million in the key stewardship funding that has been tentatively agreed to. I should mention, as it relates to stewardship dollars for land acquisition, there's that additional 5 within key stewardship funding that comes in specifically for land acquisition, as well as our individual projects. These all could potentially still be vetoed by the governor. So the work really continues until July 1st when the state's fiscal year starts and the governor signs the budget. So there is $20 million plus the 5 for land acquisition as it relates to key stewardship in the budget currently.
And then you didn't mention the elephant in the room, which is always our insurance affordability, our windstorm, and our very own citizens. Was there any discussion about corralling their rate increases and seeing if there was some way they could stop continuing to increase our windstorm rates?
So there were provisions in a substantive Office of Insurance Regulation package really relating to property insurance as a whole, none of which crossed the finish line, and really little was done at all as it relates to property insurance this session.
All right, thank you.
Deb, do you have anything?
I'd just like to clarify on the stewardship money. So it's 20,000 plus 5, so there's a total of 25,000, but it's,
Million.
or I'm sorry, million. Or is it 20 and the 5's included in it?
20 and the 5 is included in.
Okay, that's what I remembered, but that's not what I heard, so Thank you.
And I apologize for that.
It's not your fault,
Councilman,
mine.
one of the other things that we're dealing with right now is how that 20 million would actually be conveyed to communities in the Keys. There was a disagreement originally between, previously and historically, we've operated under an interlocal agreement, how those funds would be dispersed through the individual communities within the Keys. Last year, DEP did a little bit of a switch on us, and we had a grant program for what was the remaining $9.5 million to be dispersed. So right now, it looks like the language in the budget says that we will have a new interlocal agreement. The problem there is I don't believe there is an official interlocal agreement that has been put together. So there's a little bit of a question on the disbursement of those key stewardship dollars as it stands today.
And considering that we utilize those dollars, we need to know those things, right? Thank you.
And I believe that, there is a discussion amongst the communities about whether or not a new ILA will be issued. Obviously, that's going to take the consent of all participants. So not necessarily something that could be done incredibly quickly, I wouldn't think. But we're still trying to figure out which direction we're going there.
Madam Mayor, maybe Ron can touch on the ILA. Is there anything you can add to that ILA?
Go ahead.
Yes, we've been having discussions at the manager level and administrator level about doing a percentage. I've talked, for example, George Garrett, the city manager of Marathon. We are looking at that. We can't move forward until we know what the legislature is going to do. We do all agree that the grant program didn't work very well, at least for the municipal. It worked okay for the county. So we've pretty much agreed not to do the grant program, just to figure out some type of percentages and then work on that based on past history. So we should have that ILA done and a local agreement done within a week or so after session's over, once we know what we have to work with. And a couple other things, that the stewardship money, that's an annual thing, and we can't really count on it, but we're going to start early with that just to ensure that it remains in effect. And then a couple other things. The budget always comes first. So when we look at our priorities, we should start really looking at identifying things we want in the budget. For example, boat ramps. I know the mayor is very hot on trying to get some money from the state for boat ramps, and we need to start that pretty early because that's a long process. Looking at land acquisition, for example, there are some funds out there. We have a land acquisition committee at the village level, and we're starting to look at that, and we need to maybe set some partnerships up where we might put up some money and the state put some money. So we're looking at doing some of that too, where we can't put the entire bill, but maybe we can work with the state or even federal governments on that. So those are examples. Nearshore water quality. We have some issues already out there with water quality. Maybe there's some grants out there for that too, through the state. And so the budget issues, I think we should work on almost immediately. On the policy issues, obviously that takes a longer time, but as Councilmember Horton mentioned, windstorm insurance is a continuous problem. In the past, what we were able to do was we put a cap on insurance with citizens' property insurance. Citizens' property insurance really, when we have direct control because that's state-owned. We use the area of critical state concern designation as a way to kind of give a carve-out without saying Monroe County. I've talked to Mel Montagne with FIRM, Fair Insurance Rates of Monroe, and we think we need to probably try that again. The good news is other counties are now feeling what we felt 15 years ago, and other counties are now getting these big increases. And I always remind everybody that Monroe County is a donor county. That means we put in millions more every year in premiums than they pay out in claims. And so we have a good argument on paper, but we have to start building some support around the state. One other issue I want to mention is we're also going to be going to the League of Cities. We're going to be talking to other cities about, are there any issues with these communities that are basically manufactured homes, but are being assessed, they're not being assessed as homes, they're being assessed differently. And it's creating some disparities with the neighborhoods. We're providing full services as though they're a home, being assessed as a home, they're not being assessed as a home. So I'm also trying to identify where around the state this also could be happening, because it is impacting the tax base and also the services that we're providing that we're not basically getting paid for. I know that particularly Councilman Horton has an issue, but I know others of you have mentioned it to me too, that it's just we're not trying to look at raising taxes, it's closing a loophole. They're just not paying their fair share. And so that's an issue I think we need to start building support immediately. I've already looked at our lobbyists, and look at their client list to make sure they have no conflicts. I've been assured that there's no conflict with that issue with either Southern Group or Gray Robinson, for example. But we need to find out what kind of team we can put together to at least look at the issue. I'm not saying we're going to pass it, but you got to start somewhere. So those are questions about the budget priorities, which we need to start now. The policy priorities we need to start looking at, but we have a little more time on that. I had lunch today along with Councilwoman Richards with Jim Mooney. He was the speaker at Rotor today, and we had a chance to speak. He's very aware of our issues. He's a former mayor and councilman. He also knows about the property tax situation. He's actually, I think, on the task force that was appointed by the speaker. So we have a good opportunity to have our own state legislator talk to us about property tax relief, but also the impact of just cutting taxes on all county and local governments, because it's obviously be a huge hit. So there's ways of doing it surgically without doing a broad axe. I don't think they've got that detail, but we certainly need to stay in touch with Representative Mooney and Senator Rodriguez on those issues.
What I'd like to see is we work into either one of our meetings or a special meeting where we all talk about what we would like to see worked on, so we can sort of have one list with several items on it that we all agree on, instead of everybody sending their own thing. I'd like for us to all have a discussion, the community to be involved, and, give Ryan, which we have never done in their defense, a list to them what we work on. So that's what I'd like to, maybe we can do it in July, August, whatever. I know we have budget, but I think this is very important, and by September, we will all agree on maybe, we can't put 100 things on there, but 5, 10 things that we all think, yes, we should go in that direction. So that is what I'd like to see happen, if everybody's okay with that.
I like it.
Okay? A workshop, whatever, okay? And Ryan, thank you for answering all my phone calls. Thank you for running around Tallahassee for me, for helping me. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay? Anybody have anything else? Brian, do you have anything else for us? John?
And Kate Deloach is in the audience
Oh, I
if she wants to be
didn't-
recognized.
Oh, okay.
Just to say hello, if nothing
Oh,
else.
there she is. Okay, come on up. Would you like to come up? Or you?
You're on the spot.
I'll just jump up to say I look forward to working with Ryan and getting up to speed and working with everyone this next session.
I look forward to it too. Thank you, Kate.
Welcome aboard, Kate.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? John, Jennifer, are we good? We say goodbye to Ryan? All right, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you greatly, and we'll get you our list, okay?
Absolutely. And let us know, Mayor, how you'd like us to be involved. We're happy to answer calls, be available at those workshops, whatever you need.
I appreciate that. I hope I hear from you soon, Intent.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye. Okay, is there anything, or we should break between now and 5:30? Because Vince can get set up. We all good with that? Marnie, do you want to fix the record to know that Steve is here? Yeah. Okay, because you weren't here when we called the roll, so I want to make sure we know you're here. Okay, everybody, we'll see you at 5:30. Thank you.